Curious, a new path. You have never found a path like this before when you were wandering in the forest. Where does it lead, you think? So you decide to follow it, seeing where it leads. You follow it for a while, but you can't quite shake the feeling that you feel like it leads to nowhere. And when eventually you tire of following the path and decide to head back to where you came from, you follow it back. But somehow, as you try to follow this path, you don't seem to be able to actually find your way back, despite following the exact same path that you walked on. You can't find the same place that you began to walk on this path on before, and it confuses you. Furthermore, you're also feeling like you're watched by something. Something is observing you, hidden away from sight in the forest. Every time you're turning around to look over your shoulder, you see nothing, but you're certain that something is observing you from among the trees and the thickets of the forest. Something is watching you, and you're getting afraid. Really, really afraid, as the darkness is slowly approaching in the forest. And you now know that you're truly lost in it, but not alone, as something that probably does not want you well is following you. Also, you have begun to hear the screech of a bird of prey. A hawk screech, but no hawk is in sight. Nothing. And you have begun to hear it more and more the longer you're staying in this forsaken forest. Never ceasing, always being there. As you get more and more lost and isolated in your own fear. Fear of the unknown that is out there and watching you from among the dark shadows cast between the trees. You hear the screeches. You hear the screeches coming for you. You will not get out. You will not get out from this forest. What I just described was an encounter with the creature known as a Vittra, plural Vittror, which is a type of mythical being found within the folkloric traditions of the Nordic countries. The Vittra is a type of nature spirit, a type of mythological creature very common to Scandinavian folkloric traditions. Vittror are said to be invisible most of the time, and are actually called and referred to as the osynliga, the unseen, at times in various Nordic traditions. But when they are seen, they can appear in various shapes, including as regular humans that live and dress like any other human. But they live underground or sometimes in a parallel reality. In certain traditions, they are also regular shapeshifters and can take various forms, including a very common form of looking like a horrifying goblin-like creature, and they take this form especially when they are angered. In fact, the English creatures known as goblins, when translated into Swedish, are sometimes referred to as vättar, which is the southern Scandinavian name for Vittror. Though this goblin-like form is not the only form that Vittror take. Sometimes they take the form of being very tall and slim humans, and sometimes they take the form of animals, such as wolves, bears, European bobcats, and rather famously or infamously, birds of prey, like in the case of the terrifying Vittror, the wild or savage Vittror. In the famous tale of Ronja Rövardotter, Ronja, the robber's daughter, by the famous Swedish author Astrid Lindgren, the wild Vittror take the form of birds of prey and attack the protagonists, and are depicted as a terrifying threat to them. And I can very much recommend reading the book. Vittror are in certain cases rather terrifying creatures that will attack people that enter into a forest, either out of sheer malice, or to guard the forest against intruders, or to guard their own herds, because Vittror are said to have their own cattle, called Vitterkor, or the cows of the Vittra, which are cows that give milk with magical properties, such as granting super strength, extreme healing abilities, or granting the drinker visions about the future and about worlds beyond this world. So pretty much hallucinogenic magical steroid milk, which a lot of people desire to have. And a lot of the Vittror are not the type of creatures that are very keen on sharing, leading to a lot of tales regarding these cows and the milk, involving Vittror and people with more bravery than sense trying to steal the milk or the cows, and often ending up cursed or killed or both by a very angry Vittra. In connection to these herds, many Vittror have their own roads and magical meadows that they use for their cattle, and the Vittras roads are called Vitterstråk, or the roads of the Vittra, or the paths of the Vittra. And it's very common in various tales that people get lost on these paths if you follow them, or that the Vittra are in close proximity to these paths and actively lead people astray, either by imitating the voices of people, beckoning the people on the paths to go further into the forest and get lost, or by casting their magics, changing the paths so that people get lost due to the paths changing, or by making the paths lead into magical realms from which you cannot escape. And often these magical realms distort time, so when from the outside a child might enter these realms and just stay there for a couple of minutes, they might come out of them like an old man, like several decades have passed. And also the opposite can be true. You can have stayed inside of these realms for just a short while, where several decades have passed in reality outside of that realm. And you will find that you have nothing in common with the world outside anymore. Consequently, in most tales you should avoid these Vittrastråk, these paths of the Vittra, as much as you can. And in many places on the Scandinavian peninsula, there are old maps of where people thought that these paths of the Vittra were located, so that people could avoid those places in the past. And these maps were also made for another reason. Because not only was it bad to walk on these paths, but it was also bad for the people who built their houses or farms directly on a Vittrastråk, on a Vittras path, because the Vittra with his livestock will see that the house is in the middle of his road and cause chaos and curse the homes and the families living there as revenge for having had the audacity to place a home or farm on these roads. Furthermore, the Vittror are also infamously known as thieves, and for stealing stuff from homes and farms that are located close to their paths. And like many other creatures of Nordic mythology and folklore, they sometimes steal babies too, which they will devour. So the Vittror are invisible, magical, shape-shifting herder goblins that lead people astray and lead people into magical realms to do God knows what to them, and sometimes practice cannibalism, especially on young children that they have stolen. Does not sound like a really nice creature, does it? But Vittror can also be helpful, and you can ask them for help by approaching their paths and calling for them, as they will approach and accept deals, if treated with the utmost respect when this is done. By giving various offerings and making various deals with them, they might aid you with various tasks in the forest and give you good luck when you are inside of the forest. But you have to be very careful about these offerings and deals, because a Vittra will punish you harshly if you break these deals or make an offering in a disrespectful way. And the Vittror are very similar to the fair folk in the British traditions regarding various deals and bargains with them, in that they are very literal in their interpretation of these deals and in how they treat slights towards their honor and disrespect towards them. On the flip side, once you have gained a deal or made an offering that was accepted, the Vittror are known to uphold their bargains to the letter, aiding the other partner in this relationship, as was stipulated. And this honor-bound nature of the Vittror and their literalism when it comes to agreements makes it so that you can at times outwit them and come out of various bargains and deals as the greater benefactor of these deals. And sometimes when you are caught by a Vittra on their paths or by their magics, you can actually offer deals or bargains with them to make them let you go free. Often these come with terrible prices, but if you are smart enough in various traditions, you might outwit them and get free without paying a too big of a price or even coming out on top against this creature that has ensnared you in its magics. There are tales about Vittraskatter, or the treasures of Vittror, which are often said to be fabulous, and which sometimes a very cunning and sly person might get their hands on by outwitting a Vittra in a deal, by the sheer power of loopholes and clever bargaining in making deals with them. And of course, on the opposite side of this exist the tales about people that offer their most precious of things, such as their unborn children and the like, in deals that later turn out to have not been that good and that they pay the price for, or that their families later down the line pay the price for. So it is risky to deal with the Vittror in various bargains and deals, if you have not considered all the implications of the deals made with the Vittror and the possible consequences from them with enough care. And that is the Vittra, an invisible, shape-shifting, goblin-like creature from Scandinavian folklore. And I hope you found my description about this creature fascinating. And I hope to see your comments in the comment section, as well as your questions there, and you pushing the like button on this video if you liked it. Please do subscribe, as it would help the channel spread awareness about the humanities.
اشتركوا بالقناة المفضلة.